Okay.
Here we
We'll
go.
call our meeting to order. And let's see. We have an amended agenda. Everybody's on the same agenda that we received yesterday.
Yes, President Preiner, I'd like to amend to add a new item 4. Consider compliance hearing, Richard Farrell, Edgestone Builders.
Okay, let's go back to a roll call. We have to do it on the record here. Manager Waller.
Yes.
Manager Wynant.
Here.
Manager Bradley.
Here.
Manager Wageman.
Here.
Manager Preiner is here. Okay, and then setting the agenda, as we said, we're going to add number 4. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Manager Waller. All in favor? Aye. Oh, no, we have to do it. No, we have to do it. Manager Waller.
Yes.
Aye. Manager Wynant.
Yes.
Manager Bradley.
Yes.
Manager Wageman.
Yes.
And Manager Preiner, yes. Okay, approval of the minutes.
Madam President, I move to approve the June 8th, 2020 workshop minutes.
I'd second that. This is Marcy.
We have a motion and a second for the June 8th, 2020 workshop minutes. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wynant?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wageman?
Yes.
And Manager Preiner, yes. Okay, we need the June 10th meeting minutes.
Madam President, I move to approve the June 10th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
I would second that. This is Manager Wynant. And then also note that on the manager's update, I think there's some confusion as to which meeting was attended. Talks about both Manager Bradley and I attending the Washington County Consortium meeting.
Okay,
And we attended a Ramsey County flood meeting.
okay. Everybody get that? So we have a motion and a second. We want to add the correction to that. Both Manager Wageman and,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So any further discussion? Okay, it would be a roll call vote. Manager Waller,
Yes, with the corrections.
Manager Wynant,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Wageman,
Yes.
and yes for me. So open mic, Nick has something to read into the minutes, I believe.
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers, Kyle Axtell from our office did receive a call from a landowner. She was unable to participate in our meetings, complications with her employment or schedule. And so I'll just read the email that she had sent to Kyle. Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. Hi, Kyle. I first want to thank you so much for speaking with me this morning and taking the time and interest in my concern. It is very much appreciated. I have lived at my location in Mounds View since 1978, 42 years. So I have seen many changes in our neighborhood. One change that I have not seen is the dredging and maintenance of Branch 5, Anoka Ramsey Judicial Ditch 1. The ditch is dredged perhaps 30 years ago when culverts were installed and covered. One property south of mine, and to my knowledge, nothing more has been done for maintenance or upgrades. The ditch cannot be referred to as a ditch because it no longer fits that definition. It has filled in and water spills over the adjacent city property, wetland, up to Hillview Road and more north of that. I feel that it can by no means function as a drainage system. The surrounding city property is becoming saturated and now has more stagnant standing water at any given time. The stagnant water has a rancid odor, mostly in the spring, and breeds mosquitoes, even though it has been treated by Metropolitan Mosquito Control. The entire area needs to be cleaned up of sludge, down trees, vegetation, trash, etc. I'm asking that the Board of Managers look into Branch 5 and possibly do an inspection of the situation. This request in no way will benefit me personally, but could impact some of the properties in the distant future. My regular working hours are Monday and Wednesdays, but I can be contacted by my cell rather than my home phone. Thank you for your time and attention in this matter. Joan Sandidge. I'll leave it at that, except to say that I do know that the district's public drainage team has been out in this area. We've worked with Mounds View on a number of issues. That's not to say that some further investigation isn't warranted. There was an understanding of mine from the phone call that Kyle had that maybe she wasn't quite clear about the legal jurisdiction of the ditch, which is actually quite a bit on the east side of this large wetland where it would be the headwaters of the ditch system in our jurisdiction. So it's in the record. We'll have staff do what they do and investigate this further.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Madam,
Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna ask, how do you spell the last name and what the address was? Just for the record there, or you can include it later.
Okay.
Unknown participant is now joining.
Last name Sandigge, 78 or 7817 Bona Road, Bona Road, Mounds View.
Madam President, I just have two questions for Nick. Number one, clarify, are you suggesting that the issue may be upstream of our ditch? Number one. And number two, where does this project sit on our schedule of ditch cleaning?
Yes. Yes to the first question. The ditch is at the far eastern side of this wetland from this address I noted. So we may have limited ability to go into the basin itself. I do recall from my experience in this area that there is perhaps a stormwater BMP on the back side of the wetland, which may be in need of maintenance as well. That may be a municipality issue. We'd have to check into that a little bit more. From what I understand, the culvert under the road at the headwaters has been adjusted to correct the elevation. So I'm not envisioning a repair, if you will. I think we're okay there. We'll see if Chris's eyebrows go up here, if he's got something different. So I think any work there would be a minor maintenance as the district's made that distinction in the work that we do. And so we could probably get Ashley out there and see what we might do to address the situation, if anything.
Thank you.
Madam President.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just pulled up the location on my screen here where this landowner is, and Nick is correct in his description of the relationship of the property with regard to the ditch. It is actually well upstream from where the end of the ditch is. From my experience being out at that area, I do know that there is a fairly large wetland complex there. This person's property is on the west side of the wetland complex. As Nick noted, the east side of the wetland complex has an outlet, which is branch 5 of ARGD1. But there is a head wall that is upstream of the end of the ditch that holds up the water elevation in the wetland. So the wetland itself is has a I guess an elevation or restriction to it that is held up that is outside of the jurisdiction of the ditch. And so while the work that has been done downstream on by the city of Mounds View and replacing their culvert, and by the district in completing ditch repairs, while that has alleviated some of the potential restrictions downstream, I believe, just looking at the location and what I know about the stream that there, or know about the ditch with regard to that wetland, that there likely is not a lot that the district can do to alleviate the situation. Although, again, as Nick noted, it's of benefit to go out, take a second look at the ditch again, do an inspection, make sure that there isn't anything that is on the system that is potentially holding up water elevations in the wetland.
Okay.
President Kleiner?
Yes.
Just a closing remark there. We noted the distance between the landowner and their complaint or concern and where the public drainage system, that shouldn't be reflected as a dismissal. You know, a concern is a concern regardless of where the person is located in reference to it. So we'll get staff out there to take a look.
Okay, and we'll follow that through back to, so we know the results. Okay, anybody else out there that'd like to participate in open mic that doesn't have anything on the agenda? Anybody? Okay.
Madam
well,
President, we did have someone join us online on the phone.
Yeah, is that anybody that wants to speak today at open mic? Anybody? Okay, well, we'll go ahead. You can always pick that up if it comes in. Consider the Lower Rice Creek project bid results. That'd be Matt.
President Priner, Board of Managers. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, it can.
Okay, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Hopefully this works. There we go. Is that visible?
Yes, for me.
Okay, thank you. So back with the Lower Rice Creek Stabilization Project, we are ready to award a construction contract for this project. So just a bit of background, if you recall, we received the final plans and specifications from Barr Engineering in late April of this year. Construction bids were put on Quest CDN and noticed in our newspaper of record, that's the Pioneer Press, in mid-May. Bidding for this project closed on June 11th, and we received 6 bids from contractors. That's pretty good. Some past projects we've received more, but 6 is pretty good. The bid range, pretty wide range, from $476,000 to just about $732,000. For scale or for reference, the engineer's construction estimate was $627,000. So good to see at least that the bid range kind of straddled the engineer's construction estimate. That's where we want to see it. So again, the low bid was $476,441. That came from Sunram Construction. If their name sounds familiar, it's because we've worked with them in recent years on both the Mirror Pond project. That's where Kyle Axtell was project manager, and actually the city of, oh, not Mounds View, I forget which city, St. Anthony, I think, kind of ran that project. But Sunram was the contractor for that and for the Lower Hardwood Creek project. That was in about the 2009-2010 era. Both of those projects, we had positive experiences working with Sunram Construction, so that's good. Bar Engineering, our project engineer, has determined that Sunram is a responsible bidder. That term comes from the project specifications. So in that process, Bar is reviewing Sunram's qualifications. You know, have they worked on projects like this in the past? They have, many in fact. Have they ever lost their bid bond or performance bond or been involved in any litigation in recent years related to projects like this? They have not, so there's no concerns there. So Bar determined they are a responsible bidder and they recommend awarding the contract. So again, engineers estimate $627,000. Our construction budget was $603,660. So this low bid is quite a bit below that. That's good that it's below our budget number. However, we are recommending a 20% construction contingency for this project. Now, construction contingencies are only used for unforeseen or unplanned issues. But in this case, even with a 20% contingency, we're well below our budget amount of $603,000. But there is good justification for this, I think. Lower Rice Creek is a really tricky system to work on. It's very flashy with rapid changes in flow and stage. Some of these recent rains that really largely missed our watershed. Other parts of the metro got a lot more rain, but in our watershed, you know, an inch, maybe an inch and a half, and Rice Creek can jump up almost a foot. So it's a tricky system to work on. And as we've talked about many times in the past, I think the most difficult construction issue with this project is access, getting down into the site. And on top of that, perhaps some of you have experienced this, but park and trail usage is way up this year. I was just talking to somebody at Anoka County Parks that manages the trail in that area, and they described it as every day being like a beautiful summer Saturday on these trails. It's very busy, and that's certainly not something that we anticipated. That, of course, related to COVID-19 and people just getting outside and using trails more. So there's a couple of justification. Now, of course, ideally, we're not using any of this construction contingency, but I think there's good justification for it. So again, we have our low bid. There's a resolution on page 17 of the packet. I'm sorry, I neglected to mention that these materials are in the packet beginning on page 14. But the resolution is on page 17. Assuming the board wishes to proceed and award this contract, then the notice to proceed or construction would commence not earlier than August 1st. Probably more likely we would start in early September and hopefully wrap up construction, say, before Thanksgiving. That would be the plan. Okay. So that's what I had, kind of short and sweet.
Thank you, Matt. If somebody like to have a motion?
Madam President, this is Bradley. I would like to move resolution number 2020-19, awarding the contract for the Lower Rice Creek Stabilization Project. More specifically, the contract for the Lower Rice Creek Stabilization Project be awarded to Sunram Construction, Inc. for the contract price of $476,441. They authorize the district administrator to sign and transmit the notice of award, sign the construction agreement, and issue the notice to proceed on advice of Bar Engineering, Inc. and counsel, and when prerequisites for issuance have been met by the contractor. Authorize the district administrator to sign change orders increasing contract price in an aggregate net amount not exceeding 20% of the district price, which would be $95,288.20. Finally, authorize the district administrator to manage bid bonds in accordance with the terms of the bid document.
We need a second.
Second.
Second, Manager Waller. Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll call for a vote. Manager Waller?
Yay.
Manager Winan?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagaman? Manager Wagaman?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Okay, and Manager Preiner, yes. Okay, that passes. The next thing is our preparedness plan. Beth and Teresa.
Good morning, President Preiner, Board of Managers. Teresa, I don't see you.
Teresa.
I'm here. Okay, there we go. Sorry. So, we've been working on a preparedness plan. That is one of the requirements that the state of Minnesota has for kind of safely reopening businesses at varying levels. And so you will see on your packets,
Page 20.
thank you, page 20 on the packets. All right, so you've got your preparedness plan. I'm just trying to pull up all the different things. I apologize for that. So, you know, in response to all of the many changes that we've got in response to COVID, you know, we were under a stay-at-home order for some time. There have been a variety of different executive orders that have gone out. This preparedness plan is the next step in that. We are required by Executive Order 2074 to have this in place by June 29th. And so I really want to give kudos to Teresa. She did a ton of research and work to get this developed. The state of Minnesota did provide templates, and we were able to use those pretty significantly, making some changes. I won't go step by step through the memo or the plan, but we'll point out that, you know, we at this point have some limited control over the cleaning and disinfection and ventilation of our rented office suites and the garage, the shared spaces. And so we're going to continue to get information on that and work through that, as well as taking on, you know, some responsibility as staff and managers when we're in that office to make sure that we're kind of also stepping up the cleaning that we need to do. And then, you know, if you choose to authorize this preparedness plan, part of the proposed motion is that we can make that, not we, that your administrator in consultation with President Preiner can make modifications as necessary, given new executive orders or legal guidance or directive to continue to work safely. One modification for a clarifying purpose that we would like to recommend that you authorize is on page 25 of your packet. It's actually page 4 of the plan. There's a section called social or physical distancing. And the way that reads is a little bit unclear, particularly in that last bullet. And we recommend making some changes, one to the title, to have that include social or physical distancing and mask requirements, because masks play a significant role in that kind of social and physical distancing. And then on that last bullet, we want to really kind of clarify that statement to make it clear that when visitors are in our office, we will require masks of them, even if they believe they're 6 feet from us. But if they're a visitor in our office and they're, you know, mostly they're standing at Teresa's desk or, you know, kind of coming into different areas, we are going to ask them to wear masks because it reduces the amount of, it increases our confidence that our cleaning is adequate. But then also make it clear that employees are expected to wear their masks when they're in their common spaces, when we're in our common spaces, unless we are at our designated office. So the way it reads now, you could interpret it as if you think you've got 6 feet between us, you don't have to wear a mask. Given the nature of our office, we'd like to clarify that a little bit and just say, wear your masks unless you're sitting alone at your desk. So
I think that's good policy.
okay.
Anybody have any comments on this?
Madam President,
Go ahead.
I have a comment. So when if there are some changes that come up from the governor and such like this, I'd like, after the president and the administrator make those adjusted changes, where they report the changes to the board so that we know what's going on with it. That's all, just for communication.
Absolutely, Manager Waller. And I believe it is, we've also included that in the motion so that you have increased confidence that the motion does direct the administrator to inform the Board of Managers of adjustments promptly after they've been made.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear, because
Absolutely.
that way, then we know if we can have to wear 2 masks or not.
Right.
Yeah, and it is part of the motion in the last paragraph, I believe. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does somebody like to make a motion or any further comments?
If I can make one additional comment, kind of a fun aside, this plan, the draft plan, is in your board packet, which is a public document and available for people to review. And it was sent after Chuck kind of gave us his review. He did share it with another watershed district that is also having to create a preparedness plan because he thought it was a good example, and they are using it as their template with the caveats that you haven't approved it yet. It's a draft and all of that. But I thought it was a fairly nice compliment, especially to Teresa's work, that it was shared by our attorneys with another watershed district.
Well, I think
Nice.
it's good to share the information so everybody can use it. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
President Reiner, just a couple of quick comments. With all the terms here, critical and non-critical work classifications, which is where the state started, and the board, we designated some of our workers critical, et cetera. There's no longer a meaningful distinction between those two. You know, as these things open up, it's just you have to have this plan, and as long as everybody is following the plan, there's a thought that we're reducing the risk, certainly. And then, I'm sorry, I lost my train of, that it still notes within the order that work that can be performed at home shall be performed at home. And then also that the meetings, such as we're having now, are strongly encouraged, although there are provisions, you know, for gatherings and such. So I think we're in good shape.
Okay, somebody like to make the motion on page 21?
Madam President, this is Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
I move that we approve the Rice Creek Watershed District Preparedness Plan dated 6-18-2020 and authorize the administrator to sign and implement plan on advice of District Council. Authorize the administrator in consultation with Board President and advice of Council to address the Rice Creek Watershed District Preparedness Plan as warranted by new circumstances, including but not limited to changes in applicable legal directives or guidance, building management, or authorizing Rice Creek Watershed District to work outside the home. And we direct the administrator to inform the Board of Managers of Rice Creek Watershed District Preparedness Plan adjustments promptly after they have been made.
Madam President, yeah,
Yes.
we got, and that includes those changes that were suggested, Mike?
Well, I asked Beth.
I hope so. I was going to ask the same question, Manager Waller.
Yeah.
Well, certainly that was my intention.
With additions or with corrections?
Yeah, the dated 6-18-2020 with the additions as discussed earlier in our meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll second that. This is.
we have a motion and a second from Marcy. Any further discussion? Roll call would be Waller,
Yes.
Wynant,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Wagaman,
Yes.
and I say yes, so the motion passes. Thank you.
President Reiner,
Yes.
it's important to note that we are required to have a training of the plan then. Managers and staff are all part of the same team. We need to do that in the near future. And so we'll be engaging all the managers in that training. It seems if we can just simply do it once and have it well understood, we'll be there. So
Okay.
I don't know if there's any need for early discussion of potential dates, but we should get that. We'll need to get that done quickly before the 29th. So
Before the 29th. Is there anybody out there that can't do anything before the 29th? Otherwise, we'll let Nick set up a time. Anybody? Okay, we'll just let us know, Nick, and we'll choose from whatever you provide us.
all righty.
Okay, letter to Anoka County.
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers, at a previous meeting, we had discussion about our relationship with Anoka County, specifically its Board of Managers, in some recent commissioner comments and concerns that were raised. We provided within your packet a draft letter that was put together with some work with Smith Partners. Manager Bradley had some comments he wanted to share. We did share those with all of you, and it has been posted and noticed accordingly. As a sideline, I'll just note again, the attachment is small in text, but we'll print that full size when we send it. And of course, we'll look to do any adjustments in the typos and that sort of thing. But of primary importance is your thoughts on the draft document, in particular those shared by managers thus far. So we're happy to discuss.
All right. Why don't we start with Manager Bradley, and you can tell us why that you did the changes and what the purpose of them were.
First of all, I want to thank staff and our lawyer for all this effort. I mean, this is a significant undertaking, and my comments are not meant in any way as a criticism. My primary concern was I felt that we were escalating the dispute rather than responding to the dispute by asking twice for a direct meeting with the Anoka board. Having listened to the debate by the Anoka board, I did not pick up a sense that there was a general concern beyond that of the one commissioner. And therefore, I wanted to leave us with a position where we were responding questions and inviting them to ask additional questions without escalating this to the point of a face-to-face meeting where we, in one breath, are holding ourselves out as being independent, and in the second breath, suggesting that we could be called before them to explain ourselves. So that's the primary thing that caused me to start drafting. The rest of this is Mike Bradley trying to improve the clarity of our submission and our response, and is nothing more than wordsmithing. I note, Nick, that on page 5 I misspelled soliciting, so I hope that you get the clean version.
You did that? Oh my
I hope
God.
you checked my checks.
Certainly. President Preiner, Manager Bradley, I'll note that on page 3 you kind of raised a question regarding our documentations that we typically do for the state reporting on cost of the Wetland Conservation Act program. I would just say that those materials are available to the Anoka County Board or any one of the commissioners upon their request. I wasn't suggesting that we send them. In the primary reason, I guess, would be in alignment with our last discussion about our comparison to the MS4 and such, that in administrating the program, we're looking at any number of things. So we've never distinctly pulled out, how much of an inspector's time or a regulatory team member's time is spent, say, on a flood issue or on a public drainage issue or erosion control. Those things are all kind of lumped together, but we do break that out as best we can for the state. So upon request, if they'd like to see that, that would be fine.
Here would be my suggestion, Nick, on the last sentence then.
Yes.
This information is not precise, but is the extent of the data that the district has and will be provided upon request.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Any other comments from the board members?
Well,
Madam
Madam
President,
Oh, go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Louis. Go ahead, Louis. That
uh,
was you. Did you want
yeah.
to comment? Go ahead.
okay, just very briefly, I wanted to note that the suggestion in the original draft letter of a joint meeting was, I think, my best recollection of what your past board discussion was aiming at, but I don't think it was explicit. And upon seeing Manager Bradley's suggestions, I really do agree that I don't think we need to escalate this to the level that we think a joint meeting needs to be proposed. I think fundamentally what we wanted to do was get the two boards, all of its members aligned with the same information. And that's, I think, achieved with a letter. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to
I
offer
agree
that
with that because
perspective.
I don't think it was the intent for them to have joint meetings at all.
Right.
President Reiner?
Yes. Go ahead.
I would ask Louis, perhaps it's important to note clarification because during the Anoka County meeting, there are repeated references to an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. And then, there was kind of discussion about who the signatories would be and such. But my understanding is they're looking for commitment or communication from the district, and they said repeatedly also, or other similar document. And in a legal sense, a letter is that document. There's not need for something different than that, I should say. Is that correct?
Madam President, my only comment to that would be, an MOU is a non-binding memorandum that both parties put their signatures on to say, yes, this is our shared understanding. So a letter simply coming from the Board of Managers or the district here, I think it's just an effort to share our information in response to the concerns we've heard. And I still think it achieves the fundamental goal, which was to get everybody on the same page.
Madam President Bradley, again, I absolutely agree. And I don't want the letter to go into the MOU issue. That was a
Yes.
miscommunication and just would muddy the response.
Manager Wally, you have a comment?
Yeah, yes. Well, I was going to say at the beginning, I read your wordsmithing. I don't have any objections to it. All right. And I certainly don't want to escalate this. I did not get the impression from watching that board meeting that there was a need for a face-to-face boards, two boards together and all, nothing like that. And so, but about the letter itself, there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about here. For example, page 3, when we start to talk about the MS4 program. And what's important to talk about here is that really the permit requirements in the letter indicates this, we only have really 3 more stricter rules than what the general MS4 was. I think out of the 13 that were in the matrix, 10 of them were just about the same. There wasn't any significant difference. And so that's like 80%. So the city rules are pretty much in line with what the district rules are. And I think that's important to kind of point out. And the other part about this, the 10,000 square feet, I remember years ago when we did the plan in 09 or 08, we were talking about it for 10, that this was a big item of contention, and it was a battle to get it to 10,000 square feet at the time. And 10,000 square feet's a city lot. You put 4 houses on an acre, for God's sakes.
John, can we just deal with the letter and then we can come back during your report?
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that we should start to, with the letter talks about the 10,000 square feet. And I think a lot of this could be eliminated by changing that rule. And maybe we should make it clear that we're looking at T. Once you change that 10,000 square feet rule of disturbance, for example, South Washington County has a rule that says if it's 40 acres or greater, they look at the plat map for development. Instead, this has caused a lot of duplication and overlap and extra money spent, and so that I think that's we should indicate we're looking at that rule. And then let's see. I think over on page 5, when you say that section that says avoid duplication of regulation with the cities, that, I would point to the success of the stormwater plan that Lauren has worked on. She's worked with each one of these cities, bringing their stormwater plans up to date. They coordinate and are standardized with the district rules, and they've been accepted there. And I think that's a good pattern or template to point out how this is successful in working, and if you intend to work with other issues such as floodplain. And I'll give you an example. Quite a few years ago, Nick, you worked with Centerville very successfully, as I remember, on getting a floodplain adjustment with the city, with the district's newer overlook. And I know it's a pain to work with the federal government on this, but I think that's an important thing. The city had a success, and so did the district. So floodplains are one of those things. Once you know that we could work with and indicate that we're going to work with it, because that's one of the areas of the permitting program. I see a stormwater plan, floodplains, and erosion controls. Again, by changing that 10,000 square feet erosion control rule into something that's, we would let the cities take care of that and get us off the hook. We, you know, our very talented, valuable staff time is spent on this erosion control rule, and the cities just let us take the heat because their rule is the minimum of what's required, which is probably an acre. And so I think that that's an aspect that we want to point out, that we're moving forward to reform and standardize the rules with the cities. And that way you eliminate the duplication, because there's unnecessarily stringent rules that exist. I look at
Madam President.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Manager Wagaman. I don't disagree that may be what should be done down the road, but I don't think that we're at the point where we should be putting it in this letter.
Well, we
I
haven't
think
really.
the letter looks good just the way it is myself. I think it's just, it meets all the points head on, and it pretty much memorializes what we have done, says what we're gonna do. I think it touches all the points real well, so I'm happy with it just the way it is.
With Mike's corrections or regular? Steve?
With Mike's corrections,
Okay.
yes.
President Preiner, small tangent perhaps, but it certainly is reflective of what Manager Waller shared, and I look to Mr. Otterness as well. I don't want to have a disconnect between the board and staff in what we're undertaking. So at our last meeting, we had the comparison of the MS4 to the district rules. A part of that is that 10,000 square foot threshold. I inquired, I felt more than once, asking if the board was comfortable with where we were at, because this would be instructive to the work that Houston was undertaking. And I left that meeting understanding that you were comfortable that your rules did exceed the MS4 requirements, including the 10,000 square feet. And that was where you wanted to remain positioned in the work. Certainly, as we go through the statutory process, you know, you may get these comments back from cities or what have you, and you'll have to consider those. Right. But our framework right now doesn't have a change for the 10,000 square feet.
Madam President, this is Bradley. I may be having bad memory. I thought we had discussed in a different meeting. I agree absolutely with what Nick just said. I thought we discussed a different meeting, moving up to 15,000. Is that a bad memory?
I don't remember that.
I don't remember 15.
Okay.
But I do think, for the purpose of this letter, we have to say where we're at. As far as moving forward, that becomes an issue as the rule changes and as we get comments back from the cities. Personally, I have no problem with looking at increasing that. So I do think we need to go forward with that. I'm just thinking for this point, this is where we're at and that's what we have to discuss.
Right.
Marcy, I haven't heard from you.
Oh, I would agree, and I'm looking at my notes from the big sheet.
Okay.
And yes, I believe there was consensus in leaving it the way it was. And probably even our next agenda item will tell us why we need to do that. So,
Well,
I agree with the letter also.
well, Madam President, since our last meeting consensus, I've done a little more research. For example, I found out about South Washington County's use of the 40 acres.
Mhm.
So I've changed my mind to say that I think that by adjusting that rule alone, or even indicating that we're open to adjusting it in this letter, would go a long ways towards helping things out. To give
No,
a
I don't
positive
agree.
attitude, so.
I don't agree with
Well, the thing
I
is
don't either.
we don't know that we're open to it as a board. I've made my comments. John, you have yours.
Yeah.
So for this point, I don't think, we can't say we're willing to do it because the board hasn't decided they want to do it. That's the way I look at this right now. Anybody else? Any comments?
I agree.
So, Madam President, are you looking for a motion on the letter with
Yes.
Manager Bradley's edits? I would
Madam-
move approval of the letter.
Wait a minute, somebody's,
Oh,
wait a minute, Marcy, who is speaking?
President Preiner, it's Nick Tomczak, Administrator. Sorry to interrupt you and Marcy. Just to be clear, the only change to the letter be outside of grammar and typos then would be the clarification on page 3 about providing the material upon request. Again, I note that Manager Waller had, I think, 3 different things, but you've had discussion on that. So wanted to be clear about that before the motion was made, what it might include.
yes. So it's the edited letter as presented with Manager Bradley's edits and the statement that you just said, Nick, about providing that information upon request.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the motion on 55, on page 55 of our packet.
Bradley seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And I don't know, Marcy, if you added in the final version will be signed by me, the president.
Okay, you want me to do it officially? Yes.
Yeah, why don't you
I
go
would-
ahead? Well,
With the final letter being authorized by the Rice Creek Watershed Board.
Can't hear her.
no, can't hear you, Marcy. Restate, please.
Okay, so I move to, let's see. I have a motion to revise the letter to the Anoka County Board. Motion to revise. To send the letter to the Anoka County Board consistent with our discussion, adopting the final version and authorizing Rice Creek Watershed District Board President's signature. And to be clear, this is the revised letter presented to us by with Manager Bradley's revisions and the note on providing information upon request.
Okay. And Mike, second.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam President, I will vote to approve this morning based on the conclusion paragraph here where it says the Board of Managers is committed to ongoing work identified in this response. And the district takes its relationships with the municipalities and counties seriously. And we're committed to improve and actively pursuing the best relationship possible with our partner cities and counties, including Anoka County. And we're happy to respond to any further questions from the Anoka County Board. I assume that means with this paragraph, we're also happy to respond to any questions from other cities other than that. So for that basis, I will support it.
Okay, so Manager Voller, aye. Manager Winan,
Yes,
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Wageman,
Yes.
and Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay. Number 4, added in.
Yes. President Priner, this is the new item that was added to your agenda, which was a request for a compliance hearing to set it. We do like the board to be informed when we're having challenges, and while the request isn't definitively necessary, if you will, I just work with you, President Priner, to get it on the agenda. Some information beforehand is often valuable. With that, I know Patrick wrote up the memo here, and I'll leave it to him.
Okay, Patrick?
President Priner, Board of Managers, thanks for the last minute addition to the agenda here. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. How is that?
Okay.
Move in a little bit. So this is the memo that was sent out yesterday. So staff is requesting the Board of Managers schedule a compliance hearing for Hagstrom Builder Incorporated and Richard Farrell, consistent with Board Resolution 2019-31. This relates to permit application 20-003. It's a 4-lot single-family home construction project on Will Street in Maud-Meadai. The application is currently insufficient and has not been considered for administrator or board approval. During a wetland delineation site review, it was found that site grading had begun, and this is, like I just mentioned, without any sort of conditional approval or permit. Staff did send a 10-day letter on May 12th stating the need to complete on-site corrections and to comply with rule requirements. There was some back and forth with the developer. Ultimately, those items were not addressed. Administrator Tomczyk then sent a letter to the responsible parties, once again stating the corrective actions that needed to occur, and for application materials to be submitted to address the insufficient status of the application. That letter presented a deadline of Friday, June 19th, which just was this past Friday. Catherine was out there yesterday Monday, to inspect the site. On-site corrections had still not yet been completed. We did receive an updated conceptual grading plan, but the detail is lacking to show compliance with the rule and move towards board or administrator approval. So ultimately, with that letter that was sent, which I believe all the managers were copied on, none of the 4 corrective actions from that letter have been fully addressed at this time. So to move this forward, I guess staff is asking that the board, asking for board consensus to hold a compliance hearing at the July 8th board meeting.
Okay. Any the board have comments? Any board comments? If not, I'll have a motion.
yes,
Go ahead.
So this is helping me understand how this is working. First of all, they have a building permit from the city of Maud-Meadai. Is that correct? Or yeah.
It's my understanding that they have a permit for, oh goodness, one second here. A permit from the city to install a driveway. I don't know if that's a full construction permit or anything like that.
Okay. As I'm looking at my MS4 comparison to rules, which rule are they, are we sending this, which rule have they, are they not in compliance with?
Yep, the project does trigger Rule C for stormwater management. Part of the ongoing discussion here is relating to the site design. There's a, if they are providing 2 driveways, then they don't necessarily need to, comply with C6 for water quality treatment. But regardless of the site design with the amount of impervious surface, they are triggering Rule C.
And our rule, okay, so we have lots of rule Cs. Rule C 2, 6, D, what? This is a little primer I've got here, so we can take this offline if you want, but it just seems odd to me that, as John has said, you have a city thing going on, you have us requiring some regulation. How were they able to construct without even noticing us, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. President Preiner? Thank you. President Preiner, Manager Winan, I might share that the permit program and the process of application is the way that staff and the applicant come to the same page, or I should say the district and the applicant come to the same page. So when we have site disturbance, which is the elementary erosion control, and we can gauge to some degree the extent of the work that's taken place. But that leaves a large void beyond that, right? Of what you've done this much, I don't know what you plan to do, whether it be a garden shed or a big box store remains to be seen. So we work out a lot of the detail of the rules once we fully understand the nature of what they're applying for. Here, I think, is it not 4 homes, a small subdivision likely? I'll add that a good number of our municipalities do, as a matter of their own checklist, look for Rice Creek to be included and see that the district has issued a permit. Unfortunately, some cities do not do that, and they're under their own statutes as land use authority, proceed independently, and we often, run into this distinction. So at this point, the work on site is sufficient for us to know that it would require a permit. The full extent of what that permit may include remains to be seen. And then I would ask Patrick, I don't know if please clarify if necessary.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add there is just a small point of clarification. So we did notice that there was site grading occurring, but no development has started yet. They haven't started construction on homes or anything like that.
So this is the second one that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 meetings from Matamidi, if I recall.
The most recent one besides this did get into compliance before we actually had to have a compliance hearing, but it was starting to escalate in that enforcement action procedures.
President Preiner, Manager Winan, I'll just note that while our alignment with municipalities is obviously an important part of our partnerships, and to have that coordination so we can be efficient and effective in this program, there is obviously a huge burden for any given landowner who's intending to undertake a project. So even if the city gets us involved, we still have we look for the applicant's effort to make this occur and go through the process.
I can say how it works at Columbus, which has developed over the years, is that when the city hands out its application, Rice Creek is on its checklist. So everybody knows they aren't going to get their application through the city until the conversation has to happen to the Watershed. And it's right up front. They have to come to us before they do their permitting. So, maybe we can encourage other cities to, if they don't do that, to do it, because it was an issue I brought up years ago at the city, because I thought it was important that when you go to their front desk, all the agencies that you have to deal with. And so I don't know if there's something we can do more with the cities to try to do that for everybody. So,
President Preiner, I'd like to just make one further clarification here. I guess I don't know what Matamidi's process looks like specifically. This application, the permit application, was submitted January, February. It's one of the first applications we received this year. So they did at least start that initial discussion of, hey, here's a project that we'd like to do. As we reviewed the application, it became clear that they needed to provide more information. And that's why the insufficient status. But then ultimately, they did start site work before receiving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we need a motion. Where's the motion on this?
President Preiner, while a motion is certainly effective, consensus would work just basically at the bottom of Patrick Hughes's memo. We're looking for consensus for that board at compliance hearing on the July 8th meeting.
Okay. This is just to bring it to a hearing. Okay, I'll need a motion then, or a consensus. Everybody agree that we should move this forward and set a hearing date?
Well, Madam President, I'll agree to setting a hearing date. I think the hearing is probably how to determine whether they're out of compliance or whether there's even a need for a permit here. So that's it. You'll have to have a process to go through that, and the compliance hearing is what it is. But as it is now, I probably I want to see some more information. I haven't made up my mind. I want to be clear as to what the outcome of that compliance hearing would be at all at this time.
Madam President, Patrick, I believe you said that Catherine was out there yesterday and no work's been done.
I'm sorry, you cut off at the last part there, Manager Bradley.
Tell me again what happened when Catherine visited yesterday. What did she see?
Yep. Silt fence is up. The site was disturbed, and it's slowly, I think, becoming vegetated. Just over time here, but the corrective actions that were listed for in the 10-day letter and then the subsequent letter from Administrator Tomczak have not been addressed. So there's no building occurring yet.
And it's been 6 months and no building is occurring. Maybe we ought to send a letter that says before you start any building, you have to do this.
How was it written on? I believe you've already sent that.
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers, all our communications are reflective of their intent as we understand it, for them to develop what's being called villas on quail. Certainly the issue could be quickly resolved if they just said we do not intend to build anything, and we'll get the site stabilized, vegetation reestablished, that sort of thing. But it's our understanding that they'd still like to do that development. And certainly we have no concerns about that, but rather that whatever they do build is in compliance with the rules. At this point in time, there is a violation of the rules in that the area disturbed needs an erosion control permit at a minimum, and that is not in place.
So, Madam President, Nick, do you have a physical street address for this violation?
Physical street address, I do not. Maybe Patrick does as he looks. Usually, pardon me, there isn't a physical street address until there's a property present that would be defended by police and fire.
Yeah.
Would you have a location? I could go take a look.
Yep, Manager Waller, it is over 4 properties, and they all do have addresses. So they are 209, 215, 219, and 225 on Quail Street in Matabidi.
All right. Thank you very much, Pat.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
I see it there. It's in Patrick's memo.
All right, so what we need today is consensus to move this forward to a compliance hearing. Anybody opposing that? We all agree just to move it forward and see where the letters go and what we can get done.
Yes.
Okay, so for that, we're good. Anything else we need on that, Nick?
Nope, President Pryor, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
General idea, okay. And let's go ahead with the check register.
Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated June 24th, 2020 in the amount of $280,850.04 prepared by Redpath and Company.
Bradley seconds.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Manager Waller,
Yes.
Manager Winant,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Wageman,
Yes.
and Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Items for discussion. Staff introduction background. Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, President Priner, consistent with the practice that the board had started in, I'll call it getting to know your staff or improving the relationship, our professional relationship between the board and staff. We were looking to have these presentations from staff to the board. I should say maybe it's more of a dialogue with a short presentation. So with that, we look to put one on this board meeting. It doesn't look like the virtual thing is going away any too soon. We'd prefer to do this in person. Beth was kind enough to take the next spot in line, and we'll work to get through all the staff. With that, I believe Beth is ready to share with you some of her background.
Good.
Before I get started, I want to thank all of you, and I'm going to ask Molly Nelson has joined us for this call. She is our summer intern. And Molly, if I can get you to turn your camera on again for just a moment and say hello.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today.
So Molly, do you want to give them a real quick where you're at school, where you are in your lessons, and some of the work you're doing real quick for us at Rice Creek?
Yeah, so I'm currently studying at the University of Minnesota. I'm with the College of Food, Agriculture, and Natural Sciences. I'm studying environmental science, policy, and management with a minor in sustainability studies. And right now I'm currently in the middle of my senior year, so I just have one semester left before I graduate. And I'm the summer intern for Rice Creek Watershed District. And right now I've kind of been working both with Beth and Matt, kind of doing some more outreach stuff and then also field work as well. Right now I'm currently designing a rain garden maintenance packet that we're going to be handing out to virtually to residents that have rain gardens and need to maintain them throughout the year. And then with Matt, we've been going around to a few lakes throughout the watershed to do canoe lake monitoring. And that's been really exciting to do some hands-on work with the field. And anything else, Beth? Did I miss anything?
Molly wrote an article yesterday, or wrote an article that I reviewed yesterday for one of our community publications, and she has the honor, we've had great interns, and she has the honor of having the fewest first-time edits on any article written.
Mike, did you read the letter?
Yeah,
I was just going to say it to me. I'll take care of that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of known for like a lot of red ink and changes to these to first-time articles, but I'm always like, but they're always great. I just can't help myself. And there wasn't much. She did wonderful. So it's been fun. And she came on in COVID and has done all of her transitionings online. So we're really excited about the work that she's doing. And I thought today was a good time to introduce her to you because you were also going to have to hear from me. So
thank you.
Welcome, Molly. Yeah.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks.
All right. I'm going to now share my screen. And we will, I will get going with our presentation. Let's see. Can you see that, everyone?
Yep.
All right. So my name is Beth. I'm your Communications and Outreach Coordinator at Rice Creek Watershed District. And, oh, wow, what is that? Well, we'll just go back and forget that typo was there. Leaving you with so much confidence in my skills today. But just going to take a few minutes to share a little bit about my background, some of our communications and outreach efforts that we have at Rice Creek, some of the challenges that we're seeing, and then looking forward at what's down the path here. Technical difficulties. There we go. So I'm also a graduate of the University of Minnesota at the Twin Cities campus. I started right when they changed the College of Forestry to the College of Natural Resources. So I have a Natural Resources and Environmental Studies degree. My emphasis was resource protection regulation, and I was, interestingly, pre-law until my junior year. I thought I wanted to do environmental law. And my junior year of college, I decided I didn't want to do that after all. I have a forestry minor, interestingly, and was very close to a soils minor and chose not to take those last couple of classes because I thought, when on earth would I ever use a soils minor? And the answer to that is in every single job I've had since college. It would have been helpful. So, but I've always had a real interest in how words and language and policy and relationships affect our management of natural resources. My first few jobs out of college were with the state of Kansas, first with the Division of Water Resources. That was in the Department of Agriculture, and I managed water rights primarily in Western Kansas. And quite frankly, as a 22-year-old young woman doing water rights in Western Kansas, and I was the first female scientist that they had hired ever in that department to be doing that work. There was oftentimes I felt like I probably needed combat pay because water rights are a hot topic in Kansas, particularly in the West. If you do a good job in that agency and you're ready for promotion, they promote you to a completely different topic. I left water and went to waste management, where I spent a number of years doing solid waste management planning and led, that's where I really got my first taste of kind of some of the outreach work. I managed a large grant program that we had, oversaw about $12 million in grants to residents and businesses and community organizations and communities themselves for waste reduction, recycling, and composting. And planned the conference there as well. Worked for a nonprofit for a number of years as their education director. And one of the programs I ran was called Project WET, which was Water Education for Teachers. It's now been updated to Water Education Today. And it's one of the programs that we support and encourage our partners to utilize as opposed to reinventing the wheel. That program has a lot of activities that people can do to educate around water. So we, even at Rice Creek, when folks are asking us for information or activities, a lot of times I turn them on to that program because it's such a good, strong program. I spent a number of years in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. My husband took a job in Wisconsin, and I liked him a lot still, and so I thought, well, I think maybe I'll go with you. And while there, I was the education director at a botanic garden based on children's literature, and really enjoyed that. Spent a lot of time both developing programs and then implementing programs, and quite different than coming to Rice Creek Watershed District, where again, I'm at a government agency and really looking at how do we serve the people of the district. So this is a little montage, a head nod to your outreach program here on this screen. It's an exciting communications and outreach program to work with because we have so many different audiences and so many different needs, and it does not get boring. So your communications and outreach program serves the communities in our district through training and support related to the needs of our projects and programs in Rice Creek. What are we doing? How does that need to be communicated? How do we support the work of other staff? We are meeting the needs of stakeholders, including city and county partners, and we see that both in programming to them and resources for them. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. One of our audience is also the general public. And then finally, legislators and other leaders. There's me, your communications and outreach coordinator. And then on our staff recently, Marcus Green, who joined our staff and is a past intern, a portion of his time is now dedicated to kind of supporting, absolutely supporting some of our efforts in communications and outreach as they grow and we're meeting the needs of our stakeholders more and more. I also like to think of our communications and outreach team as every Rice Creek staff member and intern, because we're all interacting with the public, and that is very important to make sure that we're consistent and efficient and making clear statements about who we are and what we can offer. We have our citizen advisory committee as well as master water stewards who work with us frequently as well, and other volunteers. So how do we support Rice Creek Watershed District's projects and programs? We do that in a number of ways, and in general, if there's a large project or with our significant programs, there's a lot of discussions between myself and the lead staff people on that. And so the support can come out in a variety of different ways. One way is we've started to complete information sheets when it seemed appropriate for the project. These are more of they're very concise, tight information that we can give out to partners, to the press, and these can be used to develop some of those articles. The formatting is very similar. It's kind of our modified version of a white paper, if you will, of this is the project and this is the background. These are the common factors, the components of the project. And these have been very useful for us when we get inquiries on projects. And then we do a lot with press communications and work with other partners as well on their press communication. So here's an example that the Bald Eagle Lake Association, or excuse me, the Bald Eagle Association recently did, and in the press pubs for White Bear Lake. Other ways that we're supporting our projects and programs are city-county partner meetings. That is a very important tool that we have for communicating to our stakeholders. And again, we are both educating them and giving information to them, as well as providing them resources that they can utilize in their work. We have a legislative outreach program that we've strengthened in recent years. We've done everything from information sheets on issues. The picture example here is when there was proposed legislation regarding the DNR regulatory authority over the public drainage system. In this one, we created the first document, and then when MAUD picked it up as one of their priority issues, we worked with them to change the branding of it so it became a MAUD document. But we did create that document internally to begin with. We do tours for legislative staff, for local leaders. That picture there is from the legislative tour several years ago that had a couple of stops in Rice Creek. And so again, this is us looking for ways to keep people informed about the positive work that we're doing. Also, the building those relationships. This is really a key part of an issue you discussed earlier, so that our city and county partners know what we're doing, know what our role is, so that when people go to them, they're keeping us in mind and reminding, even residents, oh, you're getting a permit. have you talked to Rice Creek? So having them more familiar with us and our steps and our programs really reduces confusion on the back end. Another thing that we do for our partners and then also for private providers is we host technical trainings. This is a training and professional development. This isn't going to be for someone off the street, the general public. It's really going to be for city staff, county staff, roads crews, private providers, you know, kind of individuals and organizations like that. Through this technical training, we also support conferences and make a number of presentations at conferences. You know, I think you're well aware of some of the great presentations that Matt Koshin has done or Kyle Axtell. I've done several. So really showcasing the work of the district and helping increase the, you know, offering professional development to others. Some of the most common topics that we do on a rotation: winter maintenance. This is an example of a flyer for a smart salting workshop that we're hosting. Turf maintenance is one that we've offered. We have a turf maintenance workshop that's moved online this year that we're doing in conjunction with Hugo. And I'll kind of come back to that here in a second. And in the past, you've heard Terrence speak about one of the construction site BMP workshops that we co-hosted in Forest Lake, and we're looking to do more and more of those. When we do a workshop, we don't like to do anything in a vacuum. So the smart salting workshops, the turf maintenance workshops, we're doing those in partnership with Fortin Consulting, the MPCA. That keeps our costs down. We're able to utilize some grant funding so that we're not having to pay right now for some of these workshops that can otherwise be quite costly. We also look for partnership opportunities with our communities and other stakeholders. So that might mean the construction site BMP workshop in Forest Lake, where we partnered with them to bring it to their contractors. But it could also be an example with the smart salting or the turf workshop, looking at what our communities are doing and what their priorities are, and then going to them. We knew that Hugo in Washington County had applied for and received funding to do smart irrigation systems for and meters for their residents. And so they were really trying to get people to reduce overall irrigation, reduce water usage, and turn to smart irrigation technology. And so we reached out to them to see if they would like to kind of co-host this turf workshop in their community to teach contractors and then their city staff how to also implement some of that smart turf management. There's no cost to them, but they do oftentimes will help us with a location and promote it. And so that's really how we try to tease out some of these partnership opportunities with our communities, looking for those shared priorities and opportunities. Stop me at any time if you have any questions or want clarification on something that we're trying or doing, or if you'd like to make a suggestion as well. So kind of beyond that technical training and professional development, we have resources for partners and the public. Just like we don't like to do our workshops in a vacuum, we don't like to ever do anything as a one-off. We do everything to inform future activities. We also like to really leverage our partnerships and any dollars that we spend. So we're a part of a number of collaborative programs, Blue Thumb, Metro Watershed Partners, the Adopt a Dream program. We've got specific outreach collaboratives in both Washington County and Anoka County where we participate in. And what it does is it allows us to have a larger reach. We don't have to reinvent the wheels. We're able to kind of utilize shared resources and support our communities and organizations, as opposed to always having to be the lead or developing everything on our own. It also ensures that people all across our watershed district and across the metro area and greater Minnesota are getting consistent messaging. Nothing is more frustrating than having someone say, well, I thought that this was a good idea, or well, we heard this, and it's all conflicting, or it's just different enough that it can cause confusion in the public and in leadership. And so when you have shared messaging, everyone is hearing the same thing. We're using the same words, we're sending the same message, and that's really critical to having success. We also have our Master Water Stewards program and other volunteer programs. You know, the Master Water Stewards are volunteers. The way that we're implementing it in Rice Creek is the first thing that we do before recruiting is we reach out to all of our city and county partners and we invite them to collaborate with us, where we will kind of administer the Master Water Steward program, but we ask them if there are projects in their own community and would they like to have a dedicated volunteer. We've had several cities take us up on this, where we kind of jointly lead the Master Water Steward program. That relieves Rice Creek staff's efforts, and it also provides a resource to the cities. Right now, we've got a Master Water Steward candidate going through the program in Blaine, and we're working very closely with Blaine's staff on what that capstone project would be. We're aligning it with one of their priorities. They're getting that kind of local as well as regional knowledge, and so that's we think that that's the best way to implement that program to really fit them into the needs of our partners. And then finally, the resources that we provide for the partners and the public are the articles, the displays and materials that we create, the presentations we're able to give and support, videos that we co-sponsor and create. And again, it's that kind of dual use. One, it's going out to the general public oftentimes, but two, we're providing it to our partners to also use and brand or co-brand with us. You know, we mentioned before the presentation that Molly wrote an article for the city of Circle Pines related to one of the state programs, Lawns to Legumes, that's come out through Blue Thumb and the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and then put a local twist on it so that Rice Creek and Circle Pines were kind of highlighted in all of that. So we do some public programming, and generally what we do is we support public programming for our partners. We host a number of workshops for the public, and that's again where those partnerships really come into play, where the city of Shoreview may be a partner, and they're gonna provide the space and the technology to host it. We're gonna work with our Blue Thumb partners to offer it. They're gonna help with registration and promote it. And so our most recent workshop that we had that was in Shoreview, but it was virtual, we had over 78 participants. So that was 78 computers logging on, and we know that in many of those there were a number of people watching the workshop. And for a late June or for a mid-June virtual workshop on smart land care and lawn care, that's just phenomenal. We all of the partners that were involved were just thrilled, and Shoreview was extremely pleased. And we're able to see, are these folks coming from Rice Creek? We don't limit it to say only Rice Creek people, but we have great response from people in the Rice Creek Watershed District when we're hosting these programs. Let's see, we do a number of community presentations. This isn't just me, this is all of our staff, whether we're talking to lake associations and community groups, HOAs. You know, we're really trying to, one, let them know who we are, but two, what are the best practices that they should be doing. And we kind of curate those presentations to the needs of that specific group. And then the special events. We utilize mostly volunteers for those. We turn to our CAC, we turn to our Master Water Stewards. That's not to say staff never participates in them, but there's no way that staff could attend all of the special events that we get asked to attend. And so those volunteers are really critical. And you'll see this water drop and the Rice Creek Watershed District sign. That was not at that was at the 2019 White Bear Lake Barely Open. So The challenges. Some of you may recognize the Save Hansen Park sign, and that's very emblematic of some of the challenges that we face. But I would say our biggest challenges are just the size of our district and the very diverse needs of the district. Just kind of constantly needing to reflect and digest, okay, what are the needs? Who needs what? How can we provide that? The many different types of audiences that we're working with. You communicate with legislators very differently than you communicate with the general public. You inform your stakeholders very differently than you provide them with resources. So that can be a challenge. I think you'll see this phrase a lot. I know that Terrence included it in his, but it's the varying levels of partner support or engagement. Some of our cities are much more active and definitely want our resources and our support. Others aren't as engaged, but we continue to try. We continue to reach out to them and respond. You know, another challenge is community, regional, and state leadership. It's constantly changing. People have their different ideas of what a watershed district is, and so it's kind of a constant cycle of making sure that they have information, not just on us, but on our priority issues. I think the other two are kind of a lack of knowledge and understanding of water issues. You know, like it's like 99% of people say that water is important, but then what does that mean? And so a lot of people think they know about water issues and have a lot of misunderstandings. So that kind of lack of knowledge and understanding, where do you start? How do you introduce those concepts? And then finally, a lack of knowledge and understanding of watersheds and watershed districts. And that's something we've really been seeing a lot lately. And that's a priority, to get people to understand what is a watershed and what is a watershed district. And then from that, we can build on, and this is Rice Creek. So those are our big challenges. You know, looking forward, it's very exciting. I'm very excited for the staff collaborations and support that we're starting to kind of develop and build on. We're going to see an increase in HOA activities. I think that's really going to be a key and very important factor in our regulatory program and seeing some relief in their activities. The more we can inform, the more we can work with HOAs as groups, the less we'll have future problems. BMP maintenance from both permitted BMPs and voluntary BMPs, that's taking an increasing importance. In fact, our Green Corps member will be doing a lot of that in the coming year. How do we support, particularly those folks who've been permitted, with, you know, meeting the requirements and maintaining those BMPs and keeping them as working features, you know, water quality and flood control features of the landscape. We'll continue to do information sheets, offer press support. We're working on a new website that will be a real positive collaboration, I think, in the coming year. Concentrating on those external partnerships and really looking for shared priorities and shared opportunities for messaging. Again, never wanting to do something as a one-off, but really looking at how do we bring in our partners and provide them with resources. Legislative efforts, that's going to continue to be a priority, I believe, just making sure that they're aware of what a watershed district is and what our role is, and working with those community leaders. Keeping that open communication, being a trusted ally for many of our leaders is going to be very important. The image here is a sign that we've been working on. We've got a lot of concerns across the watershed district around stormwater ponds. People like to think that they are swimming holes. And so we see docks going into them. We see all sorts of kind of concerns with how people use stormwater ponds and the easements around them. And our cities have a lot of concerns about this. So we've been working to provide some stormwater pond outreach toolkits that we can use with HOAs, that cities can can use to communicate with their residents. I think we spoke earlier this year about an article that we wrote that was carried by a number of our community partners. And so this is a sign that we created that our partners can purchase, not from us, but through the sign company, to post at stormwater ponds. So people know what their job is, what the job of a stormwater pond is. So, and folks are really excited about that. In fact, right after this, I'm hopping on a call with a number of partners, including the U.S. Coast Guard and the DNR, about stormwater pond outreach. So that was a lot about your communications and outreach program. This is just a me page. Any questions or suggestions that you guys have? And I might point out, in the vintage photos, I am the big sister, not the little sister. So
Does anybody have any questions for Beth, or do we have more things that we'd like to add to her plate? Anybody? Comments, questions?
President Preiner, just a comment. I think a lot of this has historically maybe gone on in the background, if you will. I think there are obviously obligations the district has under its MS4 permit and such to have these types of communications, to educate and have a general shift. Our municipal partners, county partners have those same obligations, and I'm keying in on Beth's comment that a shared message, a consistent message, so people aren't twisting one way and then another, but it's the same message, is important. And obviously that plays a big role as to who Rice Creek is, what we do, and then through your watershed management plan, the actions that you intend to take.
And Nick, thank you. I probably did not emphasize it enough that particularly this year, you know, kind of the work plan that we've developed, we are using the watershed management plan kind of as our template. Who are the different audiences we're responsible to? What are the strategies that we use to serve them? Differentiating between education, information, persuasion, you know, and looking at what are the best tools for different audiences to meet the watershed management plan's goals.
Okay, any other questions, comments for Beth? I want to say, Beth, you've done an excellent job.
Thank you.
Beth?
Thank you.
Beth?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
You didn't mention anything about the CAC, so that might be for another day. But an update on the CAC would be helpful, as well as I know that there has been discussion about the relationship between the CAC and the Board of Managers and how we can strengthen it and use the board better. So
Yes.
that might be in another presentation, but I'm very curious about how that is all working.
Absolutely. Marcy, I apologize that I did not give that more emphasis. That is an oversight of mine. When I look at, you know, kind of our resources and tools, it's our master water stewards, it's our CAC. They are, not only do they provide recommendations and support to the board on their decision making, they really are ambassadors for us, and we ask them to go to a lot of community events. Marcy, you did the state fair for us one year, and really, I think that the CAC do a great job of kind of reflecting back to the public their own images. So when a public member sees a CAC member, it's so much more powerful than a staff member, because they are there because of their commitments and their passions, if you will, not for the paycheck, which, you know, I'm also here for my passions and commitments, but I'm a paid staff member, and so sometimes with the public, those volunteers, it's like a 2-for-1, a great bang. Mm-hmm. So I will definitely talk to Nick about providing you guys with an update and more information. I think there's even been discussion of a joint meeting at some point.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
like to see that happen too, yeah.
Yes, President Pryor, Board of Managers, Beth, I think if we haven't spoken directly about it, I think we're looking at August CAC as perhaps a joint meeting.
Yeah. And the August CAC meeting, that's Nick, you're absolutely right. You were reading my mind. We did discuss that a little bit. The August CAC meeting would normally be their field tour. We're going to do a virtual tour of the Rice Creek Watershed District in August. That's one of the projects that Molly is actually working on. So we would love for you to join us. One, kind of see a pictorial update on many of our projects and places throughout the district, but also have the opportunity to talk with the CAC and exchange some thoughts and ideas. So,
Thank you.
Any questions for Beth? Okay, anything else? Then let's move on. Before we go to the next staff reports, I just want to make sure that I have everybody ID'd that's on the line. I see that there's somebody still on the phone. Could you please identify yourself? Anybody out there on the phone, please identify yourself for our minutes. Okay, well, hearing none, then we'll just.
Manager Priner, it looks like the phone number is 612-702-1124.
Okay. Anybody hear anything? Anybody out there? Okay. So we'll move on to the staff reports. Anybody have a question on the staff reports today? And then we go to the administrative updates. What was that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, President Priner, Board of Manager, Administrator updates. I do have a couple of them to share with you. One, our mini grant program. Marcus Green has reported that all the funds for the year have been allocated. I'd say that's a good thing. Certainly early in the year, and the plantings and what have you will hopefully get established here before the seasons change. There's been a next item, number of inquiries on Rice Creek and fallen trees. As you know, you have a natural water course policy that basically looks at the removal of trees when they're associated with a cause of flooding or significant erosion for the water quality side. I think that's important to recognize. You founded that policy and it is consistent with the priorities of your watershed management plan. Certainly there's a lot of wants out there to consider, but staff are administrating consistent with that policy, and we'll give you any updates as they come along. I'll note, as you know, that Tom Schmidt, unfortunately, is out of the office at this time, and Ashley Ritchie has picked up a good number of her of those duties for the public drainage system and that sort of work. She is working on under a combined job description. You know that in the policy manual, it does instruct the administrator to stay abreast and act accordingly. I wanted you to know that I do intend to adjust her salary in the next pay period with those combined duties. As a sub-bullet of that, as we move into the new watershed management plan, changes with staff and our focuses, the job descriptions as they are written are a bit concerning. I think some of them are quite vintage and probably don't correctly address what folks are doing. And we got to eliminate the gaps and overlap. And so that's something I'll be working to bring back to you. We did Staff and myself did have a discussion with Mounds View. They were looking to affirm our work that we do on inspections. They have a number of projects in their city recently, one of which we had a 10-day letter on. So we cleaned all that up. I think we have a mutual understanding to try and work together, and they're clear about how we go about our work. As a part of that discussion, they did mention a past district permit on a project called Longview Estates. They have some concerns about the outlet of a stormwater feature there and whether or not it is built correctly. And we will be digging into that a little bit. The importance here, I think, is to note that if they have requested that if correction is in order, they're looking for us to participate in the cost of that. So we'll see what we said in our permit review and closure, and we'll go from there. And finally, I'm happy to report that the JD3 ditch repair is scheduled to start July 6th. And we will send out some communications to the cities so that they are aware that that work is beginning and what's happening on the landscape. So any number of phone calls that come into them or us, they're well informed of what's happening. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions for Nick from the board?
Nick, this is Marcy. A question about the ditch that goes into Bald Eagle Lake. You had staff talk to the landowner and gave that landowner two choices. Okay, it's the ditch that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Ashley went to talk to the landowner. It's on the ditch that runs into Bald Eagle
It's
Lake.
11.
Yes.
11.
Yep.
How did that resolve?
Unfortunately, I don't have an update for you on any change. I suspect if it was contentious, I would have heard about it. And I have no doubt that Ashley would follow through on reaching out to the landowner. So I'll put that in the no news is good news, but I will secure an update for you all.
Thank you. Anything else for Nick? Then we'll go to the July calendar. Is there anybody have any questions on that? It's pretty simple this month.
President Preiner,
Go ahead.
if I could, Board of Managers, we did cover our COVID preparedness plan. We do have to have that training, as I mentioned up there, and we're tight for deadline. The governor's order didn't leave us much time. We're happy that we got that covered in this meeting. We do have to have a training. I'm wondering if we could do that maybe Monday morning, the 29th. We would take a little bit of the board's time. I'll just guess at a half an hour to make sure we're unified on what that plan requires you to do should you come into the office and such, and then we would do the rest with staff.
Let me grab a calendar. Thank you.
Do the same.
Nick, did you say it would be about a half an hour?
That yes, Marcy, that's a guesstimate on my part. I think if you've read the plan thoroughly, you're certainly aware of what would be asked of you, but we are required to do a training, so we'll make note of it and be able to have that clarity and check the box.
It would have to be done by 10. Can we do it early, like 9 to 10 or 8:30 to 10 or whatever?
Yeah, 8:30 works on our end.
Everybody
8:30 would be great for me. Yeah.
I'm wide open.
Okay.
That's great.
All right. We will then, since all the board is present, I will have to notice that and go from there. So 8:30, the 29th.
29th. Okay, is there anything else? Managers updates, Manager Waller.
Well, you know, I'm often asked why I don't say the glass is half full. I'm a guy who wants a full glass. I don't want half empty. So yesterday I had one of those really wonderful situations. My telephone rang in the afternoon and it wasn't Amazon or Facebook or somebody trying to sell me a new roof, or it was Tom Schmidt. That was great. I tell you, I was really happy to hear from him. And he's talking about coming back to work.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
And so I'm very, very happy to have heard from him and look forward to seeing him back. And I know many of the constituents in Washington County are happy to have him back too. So that's what I wanted to tell you. That was the best phone call I've had for quite a long time. Well, except for the ones I get from Teresa, of course, you know. But anyways, I thought you should let you know he seems to be excited about returning, and so I'm looking forward to that very much.
That'll be nice, yeah.
Cool.
Any other, well, Manager Wynant?
I'm going to go back to the open mic today. The wetland that was talked about is literally outside my window here. So I would be very interested in knowing how that is resolved, which also always brings me to the discussion about water quality versus water quantity issues, because that wetland does hold water. One would say it's a natural stormwater retention area. But at the same time, because of our water quantity issues or responsibility, there's a ditch that drains it out, and you know, so you're draining out water from a natural wetland to go into a ditch, and yet in other places we are building these stormwater retention ponds to hold the water. So just to when we can see each other face to face again, I would like to have some, you know, continued, because I'm sure it goes on, but discussion about how you resolve those two tensions. And also, if Chris is still on, or Ashley, if it would be appropriate, I'd like to visit with you before or after your discussion with that landowner. And I'm here all the time because we're COVID, right? So be in touch. So thank you.
Okay.
We can certainly do that.
Manager Bradley.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Manager Wagaman.
I have nothing.
Okay. And the only thing that I would like to bring up and try to think through, we don't have to comment today, but on this non-compliant issue, it seems in the last year and a half, we've received a lot of that, which we didn't have prior. So I'm wondering, how do we, what aren't they knowing about their responsibilities to the watershed? So I'm just throwing it out there. It just seems like a lot, and we just didn't have that for years and years.
Yes.
So.
President Preiner, if I could provide a quick response. Noted. I would say we did discuss some of these matters with previous administrator to the degree that it warranted bringing it to the board, so be it. Maybe from my background, I'm just following the resolution that was adopted and the protocols that exist. What I will say is I did ask Anna, who is on the regulatory team, to look at the 10-day letter with your communication and outreach individual to try and polish that language, maybe to make clear we're getting the message across and improve that front-end coordination and their understanding of what we're looking for. So I'll leave it
Is
at
that
that.
something we should have at our next city county meeting? To work through that a little bit with them? How they're handling it versus how,
Yes, I think that would be a fine location to have it, President Preiner. I would also note that, any opportunity that we have, usually through our inspectors with the city municipal programs, is a good opportunity to try and establish some of the protocols such as you have in the city or mentioned about in the city of Columbus. So always trying to improve that.
okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Bradley moves, we adjourn.
Second,
Motion made and seconded by John Waller to adjourn. Manager Waller,
yes.
Winant,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Wageman,
Yes.
and Manager Preiner. Yes, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Okay.
you. Take care.
Adios.